always say that. Thank you for coming here and listening to this talk about phrasal verbs. This one, let me turn this off for a second. Mobiles t-shirt, пожалуйста. Да. Я понимаю по-русски. Неплохо. Нет, отлично. Working. My elbow. Okay. Hello. Woo. Okay. Testing. Visa, MasterCard, American Express. American Express, Visa, MasterCard. Whoa, that gets people's attention. Money. Thank you. Thank you for coming here. My name is George Dole. For those of you in the back, Tisha, that's why you're here, to get better in English. Probably to have a better job. Maybe to be like Shakespeare, but I doubt it. We have about 90 seats here, and this would be impossible in New York to have people sit to listen to somebody about phrasal verbs. Probably if I talked about Russian noun cases, it would be just as empty. Nobody would be sitting here. But I do this, okay? I do this once a month. My name is George Dole. Actually, I became a doctor here, but I'll get into that in a few minutes. I've lived here about 5 years. As you might be able to tell, I'm American of some sort. Like most Americans, we're kind of mutts or mixed. My mother is Canadian, so that kind of makes me half American, hyphenated American. Kind of like Obama. Although, a different hyphenated area. So some people are here for a couple of generations. My father's generation, my father's family came from France, where they were French Protestants. Bad combination in France in the early 1600s. Wars, Catholic versus Protestants. Then my father's relative, ancient relative, went to England. Another bad place to be a Protestant or Catholic. Wars. And they came to what was then not even anything except the King's Land, the colonies, in 1629. And if you know your American history probably better than me, that was 9 years after Plymouth Rock, after the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. He did not come as such a, in a nice way. They came as a indentured servant, a contracted servant. A lot like English teachers here. So, why am I here? I am here to kind of do something I've been doing for about almost 2 years now, and a monthly show whenever I can, demonstration, it's almost a show now, of phrasal verbs. And why do I do this? Well, because I feel I kind of have to. None of the 1.5 billion native English speakers in the world probably know what a phrasal verb is, or care. I'll get into that. Why do I care? Well, because I'm married to a Russian who I met in New York, and as I found out over 2 years ago, half our spoken verbs are these, what I call crazy phrasal verbs. Which means if you don't understand them, you don't have to say them. I'll say this many times tonight. You don't have to say them. But you do have to kind of understand the big ones somehow. You are taught to memorize them, as pretty much everybody else in the world who learns English is taught to memorize them. But that doesn't work so well, because if you know what like an iceberg is, top 10% think, I'm pretty sure that doesn't know at least one language, unless they're severely mentally retarded. Chinese, difficult. 4 tones. 2.5 billion Chinese speak Chinese very well, thank you. Russian, difficult language. It says the U.S., CIA. Every Russian speaks Russian. English, phrasal verbs. Every person who's born someplace listening to English around them, and as a baby or a couple of years, just existing there, they get it. Unless they don't want to get it. If you don't want to get it, then it's difficult. African languages have cliques, so every language has their series of things to help people communicate with each other. Otherwise, we don't exist as a species, probably. But English, that's why we're here today. We have this phrasal verb thing, and you recognize something about it, and I hope to make you better at it. So I taught this thing, and all my students, not just some, not just most, all of them whether they are attentive, good students, bad students, they get the skill to recognize phrasal verbs. Now I've got a problem. Now they see the ugly world, and I have to give them something to replace what a phrasal verb is. Then I had this book. Luckily, I had this book because I went through, examined, searched, looked, evaluated all the phrasal verb books in the Britannia bookstore at Pavlovskaya, and it's rather inexpensive, so I recommend it. And if I can grab, this is my Bible. After the dictionary, this is the most important thing to know. And I don't even use it to read it. I use it to settle questions that I'm not quite sure. 8,000 phrasal verbs, guaranteed. Not any native English speaker knows all of them or even some of them. But I bought this book for these 8 pages. These 8 pages. 550 verbs that replace the 1,000 most common phrasal verbs. That's worth 638 rubles to me. Maybe not to you, but to me, because it gives me a solution for people who now can recognize this, but don't have something to replace it with to understand us. And remember I said you don't have to say them. Why don't you have to say them? Because we don't care. We just don't care. We don't even know it's happening. We're not taught the label in school, so how can we know it exists? Everything in this room has a label. But when it comes to language, we don't know what these phrasal verb things are because we use them in our everyday life. It's part of our spoken culture. It comes from low German. So if anybody German here, anybody take German classes? It's kind of used to be big. Nobody has any German classes here? Wow. Okay, this comes from, you can take my word for it or talk to any German teacher. German, low German, spoken everyday German has phrasal verbs. Kind of unusual coming from Germany. But not in the high German, the Hoch German. It comes from the spoken German because that's the everyday stuff people communicate back and forth. And we took that from them and we lost it. We lost the idea of it or the label of it. Is that me? If it's me, I'm just going to kill the power. Okay, it's not me. So we've had them for over 1,000 years. We've kind of lost touch with them, except when it's a noun or as an adjective, then we hyphenate it. Bailout policy, laid off, the come in door. Right? So when we use them as a noun or as an adjective, we hyphenate it because it's really strange for a verb and preposition, verb and particle to be used as a noun. It's just illegal. It's just not possible. They stick you in jail for that. No, they don't. But it's just very illogical to use a verb and a particle, a verb and a preposition as a noun. So that you will see. Crack down. Crack down. Okay? Now, after a while, they become one word, and then it really gets hidden. But to crack, to break, down, direction, what does that mean? Crack down, to discipline. Now it's got an idea. It's got a verb. The crackdown policy. The crackdown works. I need to crack down on those noisy students. So you can see that they exist. And if you can recognize them as a noun or as a adjective, which is really easy because we hyphenate it for you. That we still do. We stopped hyphenating it as a verb 400 years ago. My sister told me this because she studied Old English as one of her 2 majors at Holyoke College. Very good college. So she said, don't do that because nobody does that anymore. Nobody's done that for 400 years. You get an SMS from me, I hyphenated it. I hyphen it, and I actually tell you the verb after it, which I've done a couple of times tonight. Search, I went through the bookstore, searched, examined, looked. What I just did, a native English speaker takes over 30 seconds to do. Why? Because phrasal verbs are very conversational. They're very relaxed, very casual. So before Great Patriotic War, World War II for us, less than 5% of the people went to college. So most of us use phrasal verbs every day, everywhere, all the time. After Great Patriotic War, more people use college words, but we still use phrasal verbs every day because they're fast to learn, 2 or 3 syllables, 2 short words, and you learn them quickly because you see the action. Chinese American stands next to German American, stands to Irish American, stands to next to African American, stands, and it's so fast to learn because you see the action. And it's only 2 syllables, so it works well. So what I do is that I now have something you can recognize phrasal verbs, so you don't have to memorize, and you have a small list, 550 verbs, which I'm trying to make smaller because A lot of them are synonyms to each other. Good news. So it's a skill. Recognize, replace. Recognize, replace. Just like Matrix. You see the real world and English. So luckily I'm not a perfectionist. I'm a practical person, pragmatic. Otherwise I would drive myself crazy with all the things that we do wrong. So I'm about finished with the theoretical part, but the nice thing is, even if I didn't say anything, it would still work, because grammar does not depend on you actually understanding. It just works whether you like it or not. Otherwise, 1% of the people in this audience who are the least intelligent people would not know Russian. But it looks like everybody's pretty smart. So, and you're all smiling, so you got the joke, so you all know English pretty well. So that doesn't work. Intelligence means nothing. It means very little for language. It's just genetic. It's innate. You can't avoid it, which is good. Because if all my customers and clients, and they're really friends, after a while, learn phrasal verbs, without exception, 100%, they learn the skill. They don't have to memorize. It takes too long to memorize. You have to be 2 years someplace to get enough of them. Then that means I can learn noun cases, which does not exist in English at all. It does exist in German, which we used to have until the Battle of Hastings. Some British person told me when the French beat the English?
Yeah.
French beat the English? 1066. So the French beat the English?
Yes.
Okay.
The Normans.
Well, okay, but it's still on the map. So the French went to England.
Yes, they did.
That's what I didn't do the Wikipedia on this thing, but that was the problem, because when the French went to England, there was a conflict between French and English because you had different words having different genders. So the mind said, too many conflicts, forget gender. And then Old English took on the idea of location, noun, verb, direct object, indirect object. So if you have cases and you have location, it's two things doing the same thing, and the mind said, okay, we've got location, don't need cases, they're faster to learn. So the mind just eliminated the idea of cases. So because the French won, the English language lost, because it was Germanic, and it lost gender, and it lost cases, the 4 cases that still exist in German. So we think of English as being from Latin, but has not so much. It gets things from French. 50% of English comes from Old French. Maybe I'll say a third of Russian comes from New French. 1800s French, 1700s French, pre-revolution, 1917, going back to somewhere in the 1700s. So there's a lot of intersection between Russian and English that you probably know, but we have no idea about. Because up to 20 years ago, no American thought they were going to be talking to too many, if any, Russians.